scared of online grooming? Things Corrine has said to me. I'm notorious, as maybe you could see from yesterday's presentation, I'm notorious for adding a comedic element to our conversations, because if we didn't, we wouldn't survive. My therapist at NECMEC said it's a very healthy coping mechanism to normalize that and laugh about it a little bit. So welcome again. As it was mentioned yesterday, I come from many years in law enforcement. Derek Marsh, when I was 18 years old, was my boss. And I enjoyed spending my time at Westminster. I did 10 years at Westminster Police Department. I moved on to the District Attorney's Office in the Human Trafficking Unit for many years. I then worked at NECMEC for a few years until I realized, working child pornography for 3 years straight is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And while I got pregnant. So my hormones were through the roof. I was just crying every day at my desk. And then from there I moved on to the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center. How many of you are familiar with fusion centers or intelligence centers? Yes. You don't count, Christine. We go way back. So just to give you guys, my thing's going to time out. We do not want that to happen. To give you guys a little bit of background story on intelligence centers. So after 9/11, the government realized that we were incredibly inefficient with conveying information between local government, state government, and federal government and the public. Hence, a lot of the reason 9/11 happened. Not a lot of information sharing. So what they did is they established fusion centers across the nation. There's 80 fusion centers in the United States. There's one in Orange County. It's called the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center. It's the only one assigned to a singular county in the entire nation. And what we do there, what we have done there, is that we relay information from locals back to the federal government. Okay, see something, say something. How many of you have been in an airport and seen the sign from Homeland Security that says, see something, say something? Mm-hmm. That information then trickles through a kayak and off to our federal partnerships. So I was a supervisor there handling the tactical analysis unit, how many of you seen Criminal Minds? Penelope Garcia? That was my whole team. So I supervised Penelope Garcia's. And it's so rewarding, it's so fun, it's really, really stressful. I had an incredible boss at the time, which, by the way, if you have a good boss at your job, the whole dynamic is just amazing. And I would come to him with ideas, and he'd say, yes, Corrine, let's do that. That's great. Go do it. Tell me about it. And then, I'd be presenting in a room like this, and halfway through, or right the minute I was done, I'd get a text message from him and said, hey, I heard from my friends that you did great today. Aww. So I had a really great boss. So moving through today with online grooming, I hope today that you leave with additional information that complements what you've already heard. Plus, I want to give you a few real-life stories, some operational information, because it's important that we combine our theories and our thinking processes with what's really happening with criminal investigations in Orange County. So I'm going to give you a few of my anecdotes and a few of my stories to go with that. So today, here are some topic points we're going to cover. Emerging trends with the internet, digital footprint. You guys have heard that topic, but what does that exactly mean in terms of criminal investigations? Enticement versus grooming. There's a big difference there, and we'll work through that one. Techniques and tactics. What are the bad guys doing? You got to know techniques and tactics if you want to effectively identify who the bad guys are. Pathway of grooming, dark web, encryption apps, generative AI, and exploitation, and what do we do with all of this information? So, right now, on the internet, we've got 5.22 billion individuals who are active on social media platform. It's growing about 5% each year, equating to 256 million users. I don't know why it's cutting it off there a little bit. So what does that mean? So oftentimes I would tell, like I mentioned yesterday in my conversation, that I would tell investigators and special agents with the FBI, your crime scene's that cell phone. You got to get a hold of that cell phone, because all that information sharing that we would see that would be applicable to a criminal investigation. Some emerging trends, the increase in cyber tip reports, we've touched on that. I mentioned this one if anyone heard what I said yesterday. 1 in 4 kids have normalized talking, welcome, come on in, have normalized talking to an adult online. Like it's not even a thing, completely normal. And the emergence of AI-generated abuse material, we're going to touch on that a bit. Deep fake material in school. The creation and dissemination of non-consensually sexually explicit imagery known, I should probably close the door if somebody walks by there and be like, oh my gosh. Non-consensual sexually explicit imagery using AI, known as deep fakes, are becoming so prevalent in the education setting. 15% of students indicated they knew someone whose images had been used in a non-consensual manner. As we have these conversations about partnerships and collaboration, we mustn't leave out the school settings. It's so important. I know when I'm going through information, if I can have teachers and administrators and people in that school setting know some of this baseline knowledge of it, then they can pass forward that wealth of information to the students and the populations they serve. Your digital footprint, the trail of personal data left behind online, including social media, posts, messages, and photo and browsing history. Browsing history. Nobody wants to see anybody's Google search history. Public profiles, location tags, oversharing can make children incredibly vulnerable to online predators. Online images can be stolen or manipulated into deepfake explicit content. So as my job as both an analyst and a supervisor of analysts, we don't hack into people's system. Has anybody seen that meme on Instagram, maybe it's on TikTok too, where it's like, say hi to your friends at the FBI and you wave it to your camera? We don't do that, guys. That's like not real at all. We must have legal process to look at anything. So we are definitely, in fact, we are more strict with constitutional rights and protected information than even the general population. So you guys could go on Google, look up Jane Doe, look up all the information, and that's your day. There's nothing criminal about it. You can do that, you know. For somebody in the government like myself, I have to have a reason to look at your stuff. I cannot look at something and just arbitrarily. It's First Amendment protected activity. So, for example, a lot of the protests that we have with political conflicts, a lot of that, like we can't go on there and start watching a live stream of a protest because there's nothing criminal about that. Okay? So sorry to burst the bubble. It's not as cool as it seems in that capacity with the government. And what do I say when I mean child sexual abuse material? CSAM. This is a very, very important because I'll use it quite often in our conversations. Any visual depiction of sexually explicit individual with conduct involving a person less than 18 years old. Now, this is very different than if we're talking about child pornography, and I mentioned this yesterday in our conversation, that this term and the legal definition of child pornography, okay? So you'll see sometimes in press releases for the Department of Justice or even press releases with the Sheriff's Department or the District Attorney's Office in Orange County, it'll say child pornography. It won't always say child sexual abuse material, and there's a legal reason that they're doing that. So enticement versus grooming, and what are the differences? Enticement's an individual communicating with someone believed to be a child through the internet with the intent to commit a sexual offense or an abduction. Their intent is to sexually offend or abduct. Online grooming is when someone uses that technology to build a relationship with that person, and they may do something sexual like send images and videos. So online enticement of a minor for sexual purposes is a violation of a crime in California. We have a specific penal code section for that. Okay? When I was mentioning that there were individuals going on different applications trying to meet a kid to have sex with them within, the next 20 minutes, online enticement, not online grooming.
It's me, Ella. Well, a digital version of me, just a bit older. Amazing what technology can do these days, isn't it? All you need are a couple of pictures, like the ones you share on social media, where they can be taken and used by everybody. I know for you these pictures are just memories, but for others, they are data. And for me, maybe the beginning of a horrible future. A future where my identity can be stolen just like that. Where I can go to prison for things that I would never do. Imagine my credit score being destroyed, Dad. Or my voice copied to scam you, Mom.
Mom, I'm in trouble. I need you to send me money, please.
I don't want to become a meme. And I certainly don't want this. What you share online is like a digital footprint that will follow me around for the rest of my life. I'm telling you this because I know you love me and would never do anything to harm me. So please, Mom, please, Dad, protect my virtual privacy.
So that video was created with generative artificial intelligence. They took a 9-year-old little girl, they brought in her parents into the movie theater, and they created that video of an older version of her. Okay, this is where we're at. This is where we're at with generative artificial intelligence. Within a few clicks that we can create something based off of a picture of a prepubescent minor and all of the topic points she discussed. Her identity stolen, the creation of child sexual abuse material. Those are very real for hundreds of thousands and millions of families and children. And to reiterate, there's the big difference between the online enticement and online grooming. Our online grooming is much more gradual and it's much more manipulative. When we see a hands-on offender, for example, who sexually abuses a child in person, this online grooming, it's intentional. They feed off learning about the psychological manipulation of that child. There are manifestos that I read at NECMEC day in and day out of how to manipulate children. That's online grooming. It's long-term. It can last weeks, years even. They'll just a little bit at a time.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
But traffickers use grooming too.
Yes.
You only have trafficking under online enticement, but traffickers use grooming too.
They can, but oftentimes what we see with traffickers after spending time, many, many years on the task force, is traffickers just move on. You are a commodity. You are a product. And when your product's not performing, you find a new product. So they're not going to invest in it just because the quantity alone. So for example, when I was working on the task force and I was operating an undercover account, they would send a specific message to me. And it would say, hey, we're only hiring high-end girls to do this modeling service, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's sending that exact message to thousands, right? Where that's our sex trafficking element, where our online grooming is talking to that specific child because there's intentionality behind choosing that one child. So they can happen in both situations, but there's nuanced differences in the two. But that's a great question. It's a great point. So their goal is to obtain explicit content, meet in person for abuse or trafficking, right? So they're trying to get the child to produce that sexual images, things like that. This one may be a child abduction. This one may be a kidnapping. This may be child sexual abuse material as well. It depends. There's actually actual directions on how to get a child to leave their house as quickly as possible. So in our online grooming, here's some more research that I thought was incredibly helpful. The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children highlights that Snapchat, Instagram, and WhatsApp are among the most common platforms used for online grooming. Just because they're the most common doesn't mean that there's hundreds of thousands that are incredibly detrimental. So for example, there's Meet Me. If I ever see a kid with a Meet Me account, I'm instantly concerned because there's nothing good about Meet Me. Within a few seconds, we would use Meet Me to find somebody that would drive to our undercover location to commit a sexual offense. And NECMEC in 21 said, offenders use tactics such as flattery, threats, blackmail to manipulate victims into sharing personal information or explicit content. They pick specific tactics with regards to the child. So, for example, if you have a child that's presenting maybe on the surface level of all the things in the world, coming from an affluent area, they're star of their soccer team, they have tons of friends, and of course their profile's public, and all those things. All right. Well, then maybe threats would work, or maybe blackmail would work, but flattery may not because everybody tells her she's pretty. But maybe there's another situation where a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl has never been told that she's beautiful. And he goes, I'm going to tell her she's beautiful. The flattery comes in. And then the study by the Internet Watch Foundation found that reports of online sexual abuse have surged, what I talked about yesterday, 374% increase in self-generated child sexual abuse material. The kids are then taking their devices and creating sexually explicit imagery and sharing it with the world. How often have we normalized in society this idea of it's okay to send or receive nude photos? We open something and it's like, that's terrible, okay? It's getting younger and younger where kids think walking into a bathroom and taking a picture of their genitals and sending it to somebody's a form of flattery. Then on the receiving end, accepting images that are sexually explicit in nature. And unfortunately, kiddos and juveniles and kids that are still developing the frontal lobe may not realize that receiving sexually explicit material is a crime. They are in possession at that point of child pornography and can legally be held accountable for it. Hi, hello, how are you? I'm fine. 9 days later. Okay, now I'm gonna leave and start walking. You can start driving to me if you want. This happened in Orange County, in Mission Viejo, guys. I got woken up on a Saturday to go to Mission Viejo City Hall because the girl was gone. We couldn't find her. I had to answer to parents and to all of these people and my boss. It's like, well, you worked at NECMEC, where is she? I'm like, sir, that's not how this works. And I spent hours sitting in front of my computer. My job is not to speak directly with parents. I stay out of it. I don't want to be in a police report. I don't want anybody to know the stuff that I do. I'd go to the investigators and I'd say, hey, just ask mom one more time. One more time, what happened? Where's her devices? Her phone's sitting right here. She doesn't have her phone. Okay, there's got to be something else. Nobody's talking without an electronic. Where's your iPad? It's gone. Okay. Does that iPad have cell service? No. Okay. Do you have a cloud account on that? Yes. Okay, perfect. Go on the cloud account. Serve an exigency warrant to the cloud account with Apple. Find out that she actually hit the Wi-Fi out of her school 4 hours ago. We go to the school, we look at surveillance video, we find her standing there as the car pulls up and the Uber, and she gets in the Uber. Then we look at the plate, we contact Uber, we do more search warrants, we're digging, and sure enough, she's found in a hotel being sexually abused in Los Angeles. Okay? That's how it works. We're already behind in that incident because of the information. She's just gone. And it's hard as parents and guardians to articulate back the correct information to us because their heart rate's through the roof. It's the worst case scenario. We know the scary statistics. If a girl runs from a home, within 48 hours she'll be picked up by a trafficker. We know the numbers. But I can't listen to that. I just gotta help find her. And stages of online grooming, okay? They target. They learn about the kid before they send the first message oftentimes, okay? So like I said, they'll figure out what soccer team they're a part of, what sport they're into, what church they go to, what is their faith. Bring that up as a point of conversation, okay? They'll gain trust with the child victim. They'll offer emotional support. Baby, you could talk to me. Baby girl, you're beautiful. And for the girl that's never been told that, that's everything she wants to hear. Isolation. Just go upstairs, close the door. Don't tell mom. Just go to bed with your phone so I can get a hold of you. Creating a divide between the child and trusted adults. Sounds like your mom's the problem. Sounds like your teachers don't understand you. But I do. And then the desensitization. They gradually introduce this inappropriate topics, images, and requests. How do you feel about blowjobs? And the kids, they slowly desensitize them with sexual information like that. Exploitation comes later on. The offender then coerces the child into inappropriate actions, including sharing explicit content, meeting in person, or engaging in illegal activities. Well, you produced those photos for me yesterday. Now I want a video. And now that you sent me the video, I want you to go find somebody to do it with and send me that video. So by the time that these law enforcement efforts, a lot of the incredibly detrimental crime has already been committed. They pretend to be the same age, red flag city. If they say they're the exact same age as the kid, building trust, rapport, emotional manipulation, they incentivize the child. So we see this a lot with traffickers, for example. They'll say things like, oh, you know, baby girl, it's me and you against the world. If we just do these few times, we're going to have all this money. If I just put your video on Pornhub, we're going to be so wealthy. And then the boundaries and the escalations. It's kind of a little domestic violence-esque energy to it in the sense of terrible, 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 and then calm, and then flattery, and then complimentary. So it doesn't seem so bad. It doesn't seem so hurtful and detrimental. Maybe I'm just being sensitive about all of this. Sending or offering sexually explicit images of themselves, I see this a lot. Offenders will take explicit images of themselves and send it to the child victim to desensitize them. Offering incentives such as gift cards, alcohol, drugs, lodging, transportation. With my case that I had, he sent an Uber. I got you. I got the Uber. It's fine. Just get the Uber. And how to spot it? What are we looking for? And I say this often that correlation is not causation. I say it in my classes that I teach as well, right? With many different theories. But it's important to understand. If we see unexplained gifts or money, same thing with sex trafficking. Sudden secrecy in online interactions, mood changes, anxiety, depression, increased attachment to that new friend online, and reluctance to share what they're doing. You can have every single one of these. Without the due diligence of information gathering, you don't know though. So I urge you, just because we hit all check boxes in life doesn't always mean it ends in that. So information gathering. But if it just doesn't sit right and something seems off, I call this the fight method. It's so typical after reading hundreds of direct messages. They find, they initiate, they build trust, and they exploit the fight method. It is carbon copy. It's with online grooming, online enticement, sex trafficking, some kind of exploitation element. They find the kid, they initiate some kind of contact with that child victim, they build her trust, and then they exploit. And so much so, like I said, those manifestos, there's, books. We know this in sex trafficking. There's a book called Pimpology 101 that actually teaches individuals how to do this. It's the same thing with producing sexually explicit images online. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're very intentional with it. So dark web encrypted messaging apps, I get questions about this a lot. The dark web, for anyone that may not know, it's literally a simple browser. You just download a simple browser, you're on it just like you would be on Chrome or Microsoft Edge. A little bit more difficult to navigate, but not rocket science at all. Does anybody know where the dark web began from? Or we just the armpit of the internet?
The government?
The government, yes.
Military?
Yes. It was created by the military. It's actually a 501c3 nonprofit. Okay. And it makes it really difficult for child exploitation because unlike traditional surface level web or internet, we don't have a lot of that IP address information. It's bouncing off all these countries. It's just much more difficult. And then those popular encrypted apps we talked about yesterday that are owned by Meta. But we also have Telegram, Signal, and Discord. Does anybody know who owns Telegram? Does anybody use Telegram before I blast it? Okay. It's owned by the Russian government. And they collect all that information about the United States and United States citizen and communication information. And it's really hard because it's that end-to-end encryption abilities for law enforcement to do anything when there's information on Telegram. It's really, really hard for us. And then a lot of the time the tactics that I see is they start off on like a traditional platform, Instagram, Snapchat still, and then they'll get them on Telegram. So when we're working in operation, and I'm sitting there listening to the interview that investigators are having with the child victim, if it's kind of in real time, it's going super fast, it's very dynamic, I'll say, don't switch over, don't switch over, don't switch over. Because the minute they switch over, it makes my job really hard. So keep them on Snapchat. Just take over the account with Undercover. Let's keep them on Snapchat. Let's keep them on Instagram. Because they have legal process. There's things we can do. There's exigency we can do. The minute they go on Telegram, it's a rough day. It's a rough day. Okay. And why end-to-end encryption? Why, though? Why is it so difficult? Because the companies tell law enforcement that they just don't have those direct messages, that they don't retain them, that it's not available. And so when we need to see how that relationship, that exploitation began, where it began, where that IP address is hitting, what was the date and time, so that I can walk over to the DA's office and tell the prosecutor and the investigating attorneys, like, okay, their relationship started in March. The exploitation started here. This, and I can give them that chronological behavioral analysis. Okay, I can't do that if I don't have some of that information. Come on, don't do this. No. There we go. Oh, phew. Disappearing messages, anonymous accounts, encrypted cloud storage, the amount of anonymous accounts on Instagram. They'll create these just like fake floater accounts. So when law enforcement comes to me and they're like, okay, Corrine, you gotta find this bad guy. The name's Rainbow123 on Instagram. And I say, sir, I'm very good at my job, but that is nonsense. Okay, so it's really, really difficult. I've even had a sergeant come up to me and give me a picture, a copy, not even in color, black and white, of an individual, and the post-it that morning just said, find him. That's all I got. I said, oh my gosh, this is setting me up for failure. So these fake profiles are so problematic because generative artificial intelligence is getting so good. So back in the day, just a few years back in the day, but it was really just a few years ago, I could see a fake profile and be like, it's fake, I can tell, it's very obvious. Now it's really hard. It's really hard to discern whether something's authentic, organic, or whether it's created with artificial intelligence. And voice cloning. So to give a little side story to this, I, regrettably now, I gave permission to the analysts on my team to take my voice because there's voices of me on YouTube and things. And with things that I say at work. So one of the things that I say at work, and I think it can be helpful in your life, we're all floating on a rock. So when the problem feels so big and so heavy and so, like there's no solution, I would say to my team, hey, we're all floating on this rock. Let's figure it out together. Okay. So they took my voice and they wrote in those words and created my voice saying all the silly, ridiculous things I say at work. I couldn't tell the difference between the AI generated voice and my actual voice. I couldn't tell. It's very frightening. Okay. And it allows artificial intelligence that ability of creating that volume so fast. So those stories that I shared with you yesterday about going through these files, like when I'm inundated, when my threshold was like 100, I'm sure daily now it's much higher than that. You can't have that authentic human experience of going through it because the volume is just so high. So if I looked at a Dropbox that was filled with child pornography, for example, I need to establish that there was child sexual abuse material in one file to get that, to go get bad guy. But that's bad guy, right? I just need one file. Now that Dropbox may have like 100,000 files in it. So the sheer volume that we're being inundated with. And the paradigm shift, we touched on this yesterday. In January of 2024, CEOs from major tech companies, remember I told you they testified in front of Congress? Okay. The hearing was part of a broader effort for the COSA Act, which aimed at holding tech companies accountable. It passed in the Senate, but faced tough opposition in the House, especially from tech companies like Meta and Google, who lobbied hard against it. They did not support it. While the tech companies got grilled in front of Congress, meaningful legislation has yet to happen. And both Diane and I shared with you yesterday, this is that picture. These are the parents that have lost their children to sextortion. These are the images. These are their children. And they're standing at that congressional hearing saying, we have to do better. what are my thoughts? We touched on a few of these yesterday, as I mentioned, but stronger laws. I'm thankful that California is progressive enough to identify that we had an issue with a singular penal code section, and we just tweaked the wording, and it passed. That tweakage of that wording now enables our wonderful law enforcement partners to be able to go put handcuffs on the guy that's doing it. Without that tweak of that verbiage, they literally legally couldn't do it. Tech industry accountability. Let's make them sweat. Let's keep saying the things that are not right with technology and these software companies. Let's remember that we're working for them for free at this point with the amount of information gathering that they're doing on us. And guardian response, we touched on this, but being guardians to all. Showing up every day for the kids in the room. For example, I was giving a presentation one time to middle schoolers. It's my favorite thing ever. Middle school is hard. I would never want to go back to middle school. Those are rough girls. I was not cool in middle school. But I was giving a presentation, and the kids are all like bouncy and wiry and full of energy, and I'm like, okay guys, listen, let's not be, let's use our smarts, let's put on our listening hat, buckle, and let's not do things on social media, right? I'm trying to make it age appropriate and all these things, and I see one girl sitting in the back, and she's just sunken. She's not reacting. I'm not funny. That's okay. She's not engaging. She's not teasing with a classmate next to her. She's just lifeless. And so I went up to the teacher after the class, and I said, thank you so much for having me. This is really rewarding. I love doing this. I'm so thankful. What's up with Sally? Talk to me about Sally. You can, if you don't mind. And she said, oh yeah, she's struggling at home a bit. Some things are going on. I see her really tired at school every day. I said, I'm concerned. I don't know the story. You know much better than I. But just as an outside professional coming in here and having a conversation, I could see that child was maybe going through something. And she goes, you're right. I think there's more to that story too. And sure enough, there was some abuse going on in that home. And I say this because we all can wear that hat. We all can walk into a space. The time that you're at a fast food restaurant and you see some weird conversation. You walk into Home Goods and you're like, ooh, these shoes are so cute. But then you see something weird. Say something. Make it weird. Call law enforcement. People say, oh, what's the threshold to call the cops? Just call. Just call. I call on everything. You swerving down there, you're drunk. I'm calling. I do. I'm not joking. Dispatch is like, hello, Mrs. Stowers. We don't really need to hear from you today. Okay? Because what I noticed with doing that and showing up in our communities is that I was able to do my job better. Because remember that story I shared yesterday about Michigan, rainbow hair? That information was from the public. They had just sent me a Tumblr profile. That's it. Somewhere in the universe, I want to thank that person, whoever sent it, just sent me that Tumblr profile, that URL. Okay, and sometimes that's all we need. If we don't have the information, we don't know. And some people will say to me, well, I feel weird, I don't know, I don't want to be judgmental, Of course, none of us want to be judgmental. But sometimes just saying something. Let cops decide whether you were being judgmental or not. Let them decide. It's okay. No one's judging in that capacity. So deepfake technology. When we say the term deepfakes, what are we talking about? Deepfake nudes represent a new form of image-based sexual abuse. So when the original photo was not sexual in nature and then it was manipulated with artificial intelligence, that deepfake terminology comes in there. So synthetic media personalities. International model based out of Barcelona. She's fluent in Spanish, Tatiana. She travels the world. She's got about 350,000 followers. She makes 10 grand a month, and she's completely fake. She was created by Ruben Cruz, the designer and founder of the agency The Clueless. So she retains sponsorships like from Balenciaga and BMW and all these things, and she's a completely fake person. So the idea of the influencers, Kim Kardashians and the whole thing, that's old news now. Why even use a real person when you can just create somebody and monetize it? And have them do whatever it is their users want them to do.
And does that creator get the money?
Yes.
Real money?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. There's another artificially created influencer, and what the user, the owner, that's a weird term, the person that runs the account, they put their AI created persona influencer with all these celebrities. And it looks completely real. 1 in 17 teens report they have been the target of someone using technology to create a deep fake nude of them. This was just in the last week. Research from Thorne. Just in the last week, we have identified that 1 in 17 kids will know someone that has developed nudes that were deep fake, that were not legitimate. Did anybody see in Beverly Hills last year there was a school that somebody took pictures of the girls' soccer team and then created deep fakes of them and then spread it everywhere? Very scary. Very, very scary. And that was just the beginning of it. And now it's grown exponentially. So currently NCMEC is tracking 38 state laws in 24 different states relating to generative artificial intelligence-based CSAM. In 2023, NCMEC received 4,700 reports of generative AI child sexual abuse material. And they're receiving these reports from the AI companies themselves, because if they're US-based, they're congressionally mandated to register with NCMEC to send all of their potential explicit material. Meta is sending stuff, but also the public. Hey, this is happening to my daughter. Look at this link. This is my kid. And what exactly is it? It's synthetic media, so it can be videos or images, depict real people in sexually explicit situations without their consent. It enables rapid, scalable, and realistic content with minimal effort. So like an app, you go on there, create it, it's done. So back in the day, and we touched on this, you had to learn how to use Photoshop. Even older than that, you had to put something on VHS and get it through the mail if it was explicit material. Now within a few seconds, you could be sitting in a business meeting, create this stuff, send it out. And individuals and kids and teens and adults, they're targeted regardless of their consent, their digital behavior, or their awareness. We can do all the left and right parameters. We can educate, we can do all of that. But unfortunately, it still happens. So what do we do when it still happens? Let's prepare for that conversation. Who do we report? What information do we gather? That's the topic points I mentioned yesterday. Make sure the information, when it happens, that you can sit in an interview and maybe give usernames or something to investigators to get us able to work on something. The more we connect online, the more we disconnect from ourselves. Social media hijacks the teenage brain, making real-life interactions feel secondary. This is from somebody who formerly worked at Google who's saying this. Remember, we talked about this. They know exactly what they're doing. They want to keep our kids and our youth and our young adults and adults online as much as possible, so that hanging out with people feels weird. Having that, your tank filled from having lunch, having in and out with a friend, they want it to feel weird because they want you back on the devices. They want you back on the applications. So what are we seeing? That social comparison, I'm sure you touched on these a few points, but this goes along with that online grooming. They may figure out and see some kind of, I won't even call them weaknesses, some considerations with a child, and then they move on it. Okay, so portrayal of the unrealistic life standards, I relate, okay? I suck as a mom sometimes. There was a writer and a producer, I'm going to butcher the name and all that, but she said, I remember her speaking one time, and she said, the minute that you see me standing up here doing something well, it's because I'm failing at something else. And that's how it feels at times, is, to be completely honest with our group today, as a mom. I may do really well at work today. Dang, I today missed T-ball game. Okay? And if I'm feeling that, and I've got my frontal lobe development, and I've got some self-confidence, I've done the work, gone to therapy a little bit, right? Not perfect, but do the work. Let's change that. Let's do it during Christmas time to maybe a girl that's in a much more difficult situation, that isn't having the perfect Christmas, that isn't having the perfect day after school. that is struggling with somebody to even see her or listen, or struggling to even leave school to go home because that's where stepdad does it. And then you tell her, it's okay, I'm here. Just talk to me. Tell me how you're feeling. And for once in her entire life, she feels seen. That's how it happens. And that addictive nature, these platforms trigger that dopamine response. For example, have you ever heard the expression, you should hug somebody for 8 seconds a day? It could be your cat, your dog, your loved ones, a treat. Probably not a treat, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. We got to touch, guys. We're touching, okay? If we're online and we're connected to technology and we're not with each other, we're not looking at each other. How many times have you been in a conversation with somebody and you're in this really great thought process? You're like, we're connecting, and they go like this, and you're like, oh, we lost our juju. It's gone. I try so hard. My phone will be like, you know, and I'm like, be present, be present. That diminished attention span. Adults, we're guilty of it. We go online, we go on the Insta, then Pinterest, and then YouTube, and then circle back to our email, hopefully no work emails. Then we circle back to the weather because we need to see if it's, oh, California, sunshine again. Wow, surprise. You know, like we do the circulation of applications, even as adults. Well, our kids and our teens are doing the same thing. That addictive kind of behavior. Harvard University. The #1 university in the United States for people that work at Meta. They're really, really smart folks. Those software engineers, they're much smarter than I. I'm a lot for engineers. I've been at some, tech facilities and things like that for meetings, and sometimes I'm a little too peppy and happy. I had somebody say to me, like, are you just really bubbly like that every day? And I said, yes. We segue, but engineers get weird with me sometimes. But Harvard University, the #1 university of people working at Meta. They're not messing around. Can you imagine? Let's just think about this for a second. Can you imagine if we took all those smart individuals and we put them in a room like this and we said, hey guys, instead of making money for Meta, make it solution oriented. Come up with the solution today for this. We're not leaving until we figure it out. How quickly do you think we'd figure it out? Better than where we're at now.
An hour.
An hour.
An hour.
An hour, as long as we had coffee, right? And it can lead to loneliness, social isolation, overshadowing of real-life relationships. Okay? Altered cognitive function, distorting memories. You don't remember the event that you were at because you were too concerned with taking pictures of it and posting it on Instagram or TikTok or doing your dance video. Creating echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs. If we already have disordered thinking about our eating patterns, let me go find 1,000 accounts that will support my eating disorder. Or, if there's incorrect, mis- or disinformation about our government, well, maybe I believe it now because there's 600 videos about it that are not based in truth or science or research. Our ethical considerations, we talked a little bit about this yesterday as well. We're not talking enough about it, I think. We're not talking about, like, what does this all mean? We don't really know. The internet is relatively a baby, if you think about it. I think I'm one of my age group is like the last generation that remembers a life without the internet. I got my first phone when I was 14. It was a prepaid. I remember my mom put a leather case on it. I was a figure skater. Had this plastic over the buttons. You guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And it was prepaid. She actually had to buy this gift card at AT&T to put the minutes on the phone. Anyways. Okay. But I mentioned this yesterday. I would talk to the investigators about MySpace. Okay. We were worrying about MySpace at the time. And that seemed very within grasp, within reach, MySpace. Now it's just exploded. And the deep fake victimization and psychological harm, I will say this till I'm you know. It doesn't matter if the photo wasn't real. The same psychological, emotional damage and trauma has been done in many situations. And balancing AI innovation and child protection, we cannot negate that technology assists us. It makes my job easier in a lot of ways. When I first started in police work, I used to have to fill out, I used a typewriter. I used a typewriter, guys. And it was like this greeny sheet, carbon, and I had to go through all three, and I had to give one to probation, one to the PD, one to the, you know, social workers, and all these things, right? And it would take me so long to fill out these greeny sheets for the police department. Now within seconds, it's printed, right? So there's goodness in innovation and technology. But we got to do it smart. We got to think about it. We got to get ahead of it. We have to have the hard conversations. Just because something is easy and accessible doesn't mean it's always good. We've got to look at the left and right limits of it. And I'll end with this and wrap it up, and then I'll open up for some questions. This is a recent case in Orange County. Marcos Lucero, 32, of Santa Ana, was sentenced to 15 years and 6 months. Lucero asked an 11-year-old girl for explicit pictures. She sent them to him via a social media application. Again, we're summarizing. There's a lot of online grooming in this one. He continued communicating with her when, unbeknownst to Lucero, the undercover law enforcement took over the account. Lucero suggested a meetup for sexual purposes. On September 15th of 21, he traveled from Orange County to Fresno, which is, for any of the folks who don't know, about 4 hours away, roughly, plus or minus, to have sex with that 11-year-old. He was arrested when he got there. He was recently convicted. So it happens in our backyards. It happens right here. We talk about it. I remember when I first started working in sex trafficking, we'd go up to these different areas, and they said, oh, we don't have a sex trafficking problem. I was like, you have a tree. You have a sex trafficking problem. It's the same thing with online grooming because the space doesn't change. It's the internet. Okay? So with that, I encourage you. It's phenomenal that you're here, so you get 10 extra fake points for that. Okay. But talk to your friends, talk to your families, be the weird one at parties that brings up some considerations. Say the things. Because that's the only way we culturally shift. We have a cultural shift in our dynamics with the internet and online safety. So with that, I'll end my lecture here. I'll open up to any questions that you guys are all like, no, I'm not asking her anything. I will be very open and honest. Yes?
Okay, it's a little different, but a few weeks ago, was hearing from my friend that a teenager confessed to her, I have been addicted to communicating with like an AI boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And it made me like, first of all, I'm shocked. I'm 32, and I was just like, I've never like heard of that. But it just like made me think, okay, who's getting that information? I know it's not like an image of her. It could be, maybe if she, I don't know if you upload an image and that happens, but like who Bennett, like if that's in Instagram and other things, like they're talking to someone, I don't know, like have you guys seen that? Yeah, it's not real, but who's getting that information, and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the platform, whoever runs that, whatever she's using, is getting her information. Right. So there's that information gathering value to that, and on the user of just being on it all the time, right? The participation in it. But
is that illegal? It's not illegal.
It's not illegal.
That's
And we operate on my side of the house. We operate in very strict guidelines. It's like just because it's morally, ethically, considerably, we're all sitting here going, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, what do we do? Criminally, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
So we have to look at it more holistically. Who can we get involved? What's going on with her?
Right.
Talk to this girl. Get school involved. Like all the things to pull back those onions of what's the insatiable need to talk to an artificially created voice. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
This may sound random, but if a photo or video is created of someone through AI, and you run facial recognition, would it pick it up?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Not to my knowledge. So facial recognition works a couple of ways. Number one, we have systems in law enforcement where we run facial recognition based off of booking photos. You get arrested in any state, and there's like a MOU, like an agreement between us and San Bernardino or LA or whatever, I can see all your booking photos, but I have to have legal parameters to look at that, okay? But then there's facial recognition, for example, commercial sex ads. Remember Thor, I talked about yesterday, HT Spotlight is a tool that they have. That runs kind of a facial recognition-ish against those commercial sex ads to give us a percentage of likelihood that that's that person. Well, now you put Facetune on there, and it doesn't even look like the same person. My undercover account that I operate in law enforcement is a fake picture. It's not real. So it makes our job even harder because we cannot rely on facial recognition to help us in those situations. Yes?
When you're running through Reels, I don't know if anybody else has seen this, and on Facebook, it's this whole strip of, they come through, you can scroll through about people you may know, because you have a mutual friend somewhere, or no mutual friends. So it's happening to us, grown-ups, oldsters, but at the same time, if you see a young girl in kind of a compromise, like that magazine, the one on the rock that you talked about, where do you report that? Because there was one that came through that was so not quite as explicit, like to be porn, but it was there. It was close. And I talked to a detective, and she said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do because it's coming from one of those the don't ask, don't tell governments or whatever." Back in there are countries that don't care. I'm trying to think. I think of it.
So the detective was insinuating it was like a foreign-based account, and because it was foreign-based, we couldn't do anything. That's
exactly. Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing, but I am also disagreeing. Not necessarily true.
So how do we report?
If you, like I said yesterday, if you do report to NECMEC, they have a thing on there that says submit a cyber tip. NECMEC, missingkids.org is the website. And you can put on there just the URL, or like in your situation, you could flag that account. You could also report it to Instagram, but it will take much longer. Like, I don't know if Instagram would even deem it as something concerning if it's not violating a law. So if you send it to NECMEC, it goes to an analyst. And they look at, that's Michigan, that's rainbow hair. That's how I got that. So, yeah. Yes?
Could you talk a bit more about where Snapchat falls into the space? So is it more like encrypted where it'd be hard to find, or is it more like those mainstream like Instagram where there is a way for you to find whatever's set on there?
Snapchat's the easiest.
Okay.
So they completely lie to users and say everything disappears within 5 seconds. They keep everything. They don't always listen to law enforcement, so we have to bug them when we serve legal process to them and be like, hey, you guys aren't even responding to, we sent you a court order to turn over that information. But once they do, yeah, we get some good stuff back from Snapchat.
Is it just the text, or is it also any pictures?
Everything. Everything. Don't trust Snapchat ever. Don't trust the internet ever. Any other questions?
Is law enforcement looking at OnlyFans to make sure that, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but.
So,
Or like
OnlyFans,
underage.
Pornhub, that is covered in child sexual abuse material. Covered. So is YouTube. So is Pinterest. It's every single platform. When you're saying we're looking at it, unfortunately, the volume, nobody's just like sitting on Pornhub necessarily looking unless there's an operation going on. But NECMEC and people reporting, and in theory, electronic service providers are reporting stuff that's concerning. We're not even making a dent in it. We're really not. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's 1 grain of sand on the beach is what we're doing right now. A dear friend of mine, we were talking about it, and it feels like, has anybody heard of the sand dollar theory?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the girl picking up the sand dollars and throwing them back in the ocean, okay? And then like 500 more sand dollars are coming on the beach. I don't want to see your sand dollar. But I'm saving them. They're still purple. I'm like throwing them back in. Okay, so the volume is what really does it. And then we do not have enough personnel to work this stuff. Not only do we have underpaid people that are working this stuff, this is not shocking. Made peanuts at NECMEC, nonprofit. We're there for the mission. But then the high turnover rate, because the emotional and psychological damage we experience. I cried at my desk multiple times, and I'm not a big crier. And then you have rotation. You might have somebody who works this violation for 2-3 years and gets really good at it, and then they leave. They go work something else. That's the nature of the business. Or they promote, and you lose that institutional knowledge and that connectability. And you lose all that collaborative effort they were doing and that good juju, and then you get the slump that's like not really eager to do a lot of work with it. Yeah, I don't like laziness, guys. Yes.
Like somebody said yesterday, it might have been you, I'm sorry, that you can use AI to catch them?
So there's a webinar actually coming up about this that I just found. I'm going to give it to Dr. Morgan, see if she can share it wider with you guys. There's a webinar coming up recently in the next couple of weeks. I forget who's actually hosting it. It might be in conjunction with Corrine. But they actually are creating this technology for AI purposes to help with some of it and to get us more forward thinking. But it's very slow. And we can data aggregate with AI. We can pull information together. For example, a newsflash, I can find anybody's DOB address, all their credit history within 4 seconds with law enforcement databases. Like, it's the information sitting in a private entity, okay? But that information can be aggregated with AI, so I don't have to figure out all this stuff. It'll say, like, recommended last address, right? And I'm like telling law enforcement, okay, go to this last address, right? But in terms of the actual material, we're not there yet. We need to do better. Yes?
Is there any way to actually just share like photos of your family or your children online? So like I know some people do like the little face like heart or whatever. I know some people make it all private, and is it like I know you
Yes
have a
and no.
strong feeling
Yes and
about
no.
it.
So the heart thing works well in a sense if you put it over their face before you upload it. So if you like not hand draw, but you use like the paint, like I don't know what they call it on iPhones, but like you paint on a little heart, then upload, because you have to remember these platforms own. So even if you go in there and go, oh, I'm going to edit it and stick a heart on there, well, they still have the original one that you uploaded. So that kind of defeats the purpose, other than the peripheral public view of it. The heart, the heart. You got to start where you can start, what you're comfortable with. The heart's a good place, then you start with the heart.
Okay.
Or just don't post. Everybody go to, what's it called? Cameras again. We're going to print pictures again. Go to Costco.
Text them, I guess, to the people that you trust, your family members.
I don't know. I don't have the perfect solution for it.
Yeah.
I'm a mom. I got 2 littles at home, and my family bought those, what are they called, like internet frames. Have you guys seen these?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can just like, my father-in-law, who's the kindest man west of the Mississippi, like I'm going to put, but no, because I don't want that company to own the picture of my kid.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who owns that company. I don't know what I didn't read the user agreements of that frame.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, same thing with invitations. Evites, for example. The minute you upload your picture on an Evite and send it out, you're like, oh, it's not on Facebook or Instagram, it's fine. But now that company owns your kid's face. And it's not perfect. So I would say I'm rather strict about it, right, with parameters. But like I walked into, I think I mentioned this to Diana, I walked into my kid's basketball game. She's 6 or 7. She's 7. Oh my gosh, she's going to kill me. She's 7. Sorry. When you have babies, your brain parts of it just go gray. It just doesn't work anymore. But the sign out front said, if you are going to be a part of this league, you can send to us taking your kids' photos. And I was like, what? What is this? So because I want my daughter to enjoy recreational activity and like put cute bows in her hair so she can play basketball, like I have to consent to something that I am not ethically or morally like aligned with, it's rough. So again, society, we need to have a shift. I can't be the only weird mom out there being like, don't take a picture of my kid. Please don't do that. Like, field trips, nope, Harper, move. Right? I love a Polaroid.
So that brings up the question.
This is my son in a Polaroid.
Facebook, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I have a personal account on Facebook and Instagram, which is private, and then I have for my anti-human trafficking organization is public. So how private is private? Could you go look at my stuff?
No, not necessarily. So private's better than public.
Right.
But if I go to your private profile, I can find enough to do whatever I probably need to get done.
Okay.
It's just not the greatest. Even with, so for example, if I'm looking, I worked violent gangs for a while, and if I was looking at an Instagram account with a guy holding an AR-15 and his main picture on Instagram and it was set to private and there was nothing else, I am blowing up that picture, upping the contrast, looking at the background, all the things. So private isn't perfect.
Yeah.
there's lots of good people doing work on the internet to help these things, I promise. There's lots of amazing teams out there. Yes?
So what would you say, once you give your child access to the internet, without exposing them to sextortion or images, what's the best way to educate?
I think it starts with age-based conversations, anatomy-based conversations. We use correct terms in my house.
Okay.
My son knows what a menstrual cycle is, and he's 5. Because I need to know if anything ever happened, that they could articulate to me what happened. So having those age-appropriate conversations and not being uncomfortable with saying, hey, do not send a picture of your genitals to somebody. And having it before it's needed. And the kid may just, Mom, like, stop saying this weird stuff. But it's planting a seed. And you consistently plant the seed. And then you keep watering it. And you make it weird. You make it weird. I do it all the time. And you just hope and pray that you've instilled enough knowledge and some guidance and some trust. That also opens the door for trust. Hey, you can talk to me about anything. If anything ever happens, just know it's not your fault. And there's solutions out there, and you're not alone. Because what we do see as kiddos, they are very uncomfortable disclosing the abuse until it's gone on for a very, very long time. So build that trust and rapport with the kids in your life, that they can feel like you're a trusted adult to share if something happens. Sometimes people overshare with me. It's good. Okay. I like it. Good. All right, it's about time. I will stick around. I don't want to keep you, right, it's 2:15, right? Am I on schedule? Okay.